many divisions exist among what has become known as the dissident right. This is hardly news, and it wouldn't take a video to tell you that such a division is extremely inhibiting and counterproductive. As you all know, this ultimately springs forth from the diverse ideological background of the many members comprising the various dissident factions. The current systems of organization that we have been working with so far have been very conventional, very generic, and very unsuited for what we have available to work with. If there has been any formal organization at all, it has all been conceived of as a coalition or a big tent, where somehow a plethora of historic enemies with deep foundational differences will come together to work towards a common goal. Some have realized that such organization only allows for a common enemy, but even then the prescription is to keep the big tent or the coalition and purely focus on the enemy, while hoping none of the participating members ask what happens after the enemy is gone. These are the obvious problems, but there is another dimension. The right ignores unrealized potential by insisting that everyone discard their various ideological differences for the sake of unity, expending massive amounts of energy, airtime, and ultimately constantly schisming in this futile pursuit. Examples include the religious dispute of Christians, pagans, and seculars, competition between parallelism and direct action, the constant squabbles of the different Christian denominations, the perennial split of idealists and realists, protectionism versus non-protectionism, nationalism versus traditionalism, and many more divides not mentioned. Arguments over visions and objectives also exist. Should the right focus only on the negative vision? One assertion says that a positive vision only brings more division and does not actually motivate. What about parallelism? Some say parallelism is just a waste of time distracting from direct action, while others say that parallelism is ultimately infeasible. Still more will insist that parallelism is the only way to weather the coming storm. Usually, when these differences are argued over, the instinct is to suggest that everyone should adopt one view, or that if everyone does not, then people need to be purged or need to leave. There is a very real alternative to this that preserves friendly relations between the groups on the right while allowing them to best use their beliefs and talents without being inhibited in the name of unity. This alternative is the confederal model. The basic outline is as follows. In opposition to current organization, the confederal model will consist of formal groups with defined membership, beliefs, and leaders who set their own terms of cooperation with other formal groups. This prevents people that are at odds with one another from being too close together while still allowing them to work towards their common goal and even be friendly in the long term. Put simply, the Confederacy is just applying normal communication, agreement, and organization to groups that are primarily communicating and starting online. As it stands, we have a holdover from last decade's method of organization, where a large community builds around a celebrity content maker and is composed of diverse groups that only have that content maker in common. Whenever a controversial issue arises, there is a period of needless drama that lasts anywhere between a week to a couple months that not only involves the original group where the drama started, but also inevitably pulls in every surrounding group. This is counterproductive, not only because time and energy is wasted, but also because whoever loses the drama is typically purged. In past times, without the need to organize first online and then moving on to real activity, this was usually inconsequential in the long term. Organizations in the real world schism all the time, and both sides usually keep operating, only separately after the schism. Online organization is a different story, where typically one side wins and the other side fizzles out and disbands, becomes dormant, or stagnates. This is not due to the fact that these splits happen in a different medium. Rather, the state of organization is different. The side that loses typically has nothing to fall back on, except to join a different community, or to just sign out. If the Confederacy is adopted, drama cycles like this should be rare, as differing groups are not pressed into each other. Even if there is drama, the two sides can just make their own groups and re-establish relations with the different parts of the Confederacy. But who gets to join the Confederacy? This is up to the groups that will create it. though it should be agreed upon with unanimity, like any good confederacy. My personal recommendation for these measures would be explicitly defined enemies, keeping positive visions devolved to groups rather than the entire confederacy. Everything agreed upon at the level of the entire confederacy should be the bare minimum to establish trust among the members. Outside of this, no group in the confederacy should be compelled to interact with every other member group. Each member group should instead be left to develop their positive vision and their methods towards getting there. It is this principle that underlies how the Confederacy operates. Besides the universal establishment of who is friend and who is enemy, these member groups should develop or adopt their own rules, operations, goals, and determine the degree to which they will engage with other member groups. Under current organization, there is little reason to start your own group. That is, there is very little entrepreneurial incentive or encouragement. The foundations and center points of our communities are not building, acting, investing, or swaying elites. In other words, the foundations and center points of our communities are not productive, nor is productivity incentivized. There are, of course, outliers and gradual changes being made, like meeting in person in events and encouraging people to socialize, but we are leaving a lot on the table. We could be encouraging our own class of entrepreneurs and businessmen and promoting investment, but our communities are not sufficient in trust to do so. With our current, large, vaguely outlined groups, the most we have been able to muster so far is getting a minority of people to make a personal investment in traveling across the country for a weekend. Pitching a business idea to potential supporters and investors within our own circles would be seen as an almost laughable idea because there is such a lack of trust. With the Confederacy model, smaller high-trust groups are the building blocks and do not have to focus on content production or even be generated from content producers. It is entirely feasible for a group of friends known to other people in the Confederacy to get together, develop a business plan, pitch it to other members of the Confederacy, and get their initial investors and supporters entirely from morally and ideologically aligned friends. Member groups can also write their own rules of engagement, codifying how they will interact with other groups. The flaw with this is that the entire confederal model relies on trust and honor. If someone contravenes what has been agreed upon, it should be viewed as deceit. In order to counteract this, member groups need to be able and willing to expel members should discipline not be feasible to implement. In order to prevent this from becoming a public spectacle, one solution is to mutually understand that discipline and expulsion is a private matter. It is with the advent of rules of engagement that I personally hope that professionalism, civility, and seriousness will reign on the right. For example, if a Christian group agrees to certain rules of engagement with a secular group, discussions surrounding the two groups will be less antagonistic and more productive. A very likely outcome is discussing all that can be discussed about the disagreement between the two, recognizing the inability to progress further due to those very disagreements. Disagreement and attempts at persuasion can still be had under the Confederate model, certainly, but with limits placed on cheap attacks, insults, and with other sets of rules of discussion in place, these disagreements and attempts at persuasion will be much more fruitful and less heated, if both parties agreed to such terms. This is just the outline of the model, so specific details will be covered in coming episodes. Hopefully, this has caught your interest. For if the Confederacy is adopted in any meaningful capacity, we can expect to see less drama, less animus division, more seriousness, more productive cooperation among those that work best together, better use of talent, and ultimately, a better use of our limited time and resources. Thank you for watching. If you liked what you saw and thought that the quality was high enough, please consider donating, though you are not obligated to. The subscribe star link is in the description. If you would like to see more videos like this one, feel free to check out the rest of the channel.